welcome to Season 4, Episode number 19 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. It's our 2022 Monaco GP review, as well as we're going to talk about the Indy 500 because that was fun. And we like to do fun things on this show, so we're going to talk about that race too. And as always, we are part of the Ship It Studios network. You've got Andy, and I'm along with just Deanna tonight. James has an early morning shift and isn't able to make it tonight, and John is still working his way back. But as the show notes have indicated, he's basically back, and he's probably going to be on in the near future because he's got some spicy takes, and we'll get into all that in just a minute. But Deanna, how have you enjoyed Memorial Day? Happy Memorial Day.
It's been great. It's been a nice long weekend and a really fantastic day of racing on Sunday. Best of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was probably 15 consecutive hours of actually fairly good motorsport. I think this is the longest Monaco Grand Prix that I can ever remember in terms of actual time invested in it from when it started to when it ended. But we'll get into all that in just a minute. And as always, you can find our show on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, do us a solid and click that like and subscribe button. If you're on your favorite podcasting app, and Lord knows we're pretty much on just about everywhere, and if you can find one that we're not on, let us know. We'll find a way to get on it. Click the 5-star button. It just helps us bring our content to you that much quicker. You can email our show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can find our wonderful website, www.outlapf1.com. If you're new to the sport, you picked a great time. We have stuff for you. It's called F1 for Beginners. It's our Season 4, Episode 4. And if you're looking on YouTube, you can find it. Our F1 for Beginners series. It's 3 episodes that we've chopped up to get you up to speed, soup to nuts, everything about the sport we love and love to talk about, Formula One. Deanna has her Relap channel, and Deanna, take that away.
Yes, so there is no Monaco reaction this week, and I will put up an update on my channel later this week, kind of about the future going forward. But yeah, so some updates to come there, but that'll be out this week.
Well, whatever out is, as you like to say always, it's a great time, so feel free to go check that out. And just as a reminder, the Outlap F1 Nation continues to step up. Thank you so much to our our monetary donors, Yori Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quinton Warden, Cody Walsh, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Mary Brown, Jonathan Scott, and of course, Matt Polanski from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast. He had himself a very busy weekend as well, covering MotoGP in Mugello. Joe Roberts, P2, on pace. It was real in Mugello this weekend in Moto 2, so congratulations to him representing the United States as we try to get an American back in MotoGP. As you also can support our show, if you'd like to become a member of the Outlap F1 Nation, please do check out our link in the show notes. You can donate $1, $5, $10, whatever you'd love to do. We do take all that for those funds and put it right back into the show. Lord knows we're not taking any salaries at this point. Just as another reminder, you can check out our code OUTLAP and get the 20% off and free shipping from the good folks at Manscaped. You can also check out, he's not here to model it, but if James was here, he would probably be wearing a shirt from the F1Guy.com. That is our friend Vincenzo Landino and his shirt line. Please do check that out. They are good quality shirts, and they say some cool stuff too about racing. He had one, I think, for Monaco specifically, so feel free to check that out if you'd like to. Also check out our latest sponsor, athleticgreens.com/emerging. You can get some deals there if you want to check that out. All right, so headline of the day. Deanna, tell us what you thought.
Some things never change. You have Ferrari being Ferrari with their strategy, and you have the FIA being a disaster and failing to communicate with the rest of us. We will dig into the rest of those, I'm sure, more as the show goes on, but I will start with that.
Yeah. My headline is, when saving face makes you look incredibly stupid. Between the FIA and Ferrari, it definitely turned out to be the longest Monaco GP in recent memory, both of whom kind of falling flat on their faces. We think we fix things, we try to fix things, we try to get procedures down, and we still revert back to form. I guess we are who we thought we were, both for the FIA and Ferrari. For James, his headline is, "Oh, what should have been," and I can understand that. What could have been a perfect 1-2 for Ferrari ended up in an extremely disappointing P2 and P4. And if you're Ferrari, it wasn't the P2 and P4 that you really wanted. You had it in the opposite order. Good on Carlos Sainz, but boy, that dude still needs to get a win. For John, he had this as an absolute shit show. Finally, the rain gods smile upon Monaco and give us a glimmer of hope for this not to be the worst race of the season for over a decade straight, and yet the FIA still manages to jack it up. When did the sport become so soft? If the paid drivers can't handle their shit, as evidenced by both hitting the wall in the formation laps, then perhaps they should get the out of Dodge and let the real drivers show us why they are the best in the world. This race could have been a classic, but instead turned into yet another example of why it's time for this dinosaur we call Monaco to go extinct. Woo! John's had some Tabasco tonight, I think.
Yep.
So we did have our qualifying session on Saturday, and actually it was one of the most important qualifyings of the season, and we'll take you through that now. So going out in P20 was Joe Granu, P19 was Nicholas Latifi, P18 Lance Stroll, P17 Pierre Gasly, bit of a surprise there in the AlphaTauri, P16 Alex Albon in the Williams, although Gasly I think didn't get his final lap in, and neither did Joe Granu. Going on to Q2, but going no farther, in P15 was Mick Schumacher in the Haas, P14 Daniel Ricciardo, P13 Kevin Magnussen, P12 was Valtteri Bottas, and P11, just missing out on the top 10, was Yuki Tsunoda. The top 10 from 10 to 1 in P10 was Esteban Ocon, P9 Sebastian Vettel, P8 Lewis Hamilton, P7 Fernando Alonso, P6 George Russell, P5 Lando Norris, P4 Max Verstappen, bit of a surprise there, P3 Sergio Perez, and it's an all Ferrari front row with the P2 being Carlos Sainz, and the local kid making good at least on Saturday, P1 Charles Leclerc with a lap time of 1:11.376. Deanna, thoughts on qualifying?
A few. I think first, starting off, do you have any insight as to why Sainz didn't get a penalty, or I don't think he was even investigated?
He was ultimately, it was noted but not investigated for the impeding. I think, well, they didn't give him a reprimand because if he would have had a reprimand, it would have been his third one, and that would have been a problem.
But also, no, for the seeing the yellow flags and then still proceeding to
crash okay, the very end where the crash.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything else about it. I've gone through the FIA site trying to look for things. They did not investigate that, or they just called it part of the racing incident, I assume.
Okay. That seems slightly bizarre because on the onboards you saw yellow panels, flags, all that kind of stuff.
He had one. Yeah, he had one panel that I know he did cross.
Yeah. But all at the same time, all of these Spanish-speaking drivers decided not to know how to drive anymore, apparently. Because Perez Sainz spun into him at the same time, Alonso on the other side of the track, which they never showed on the broadcast, which apparently everybody found out through my Twitter because that tweet got like 2 million impressions. Fernando Alonso crashing into the barriers for fun, I guess.
Yeah, I know. It was not even talked about. I mean, it wasn't until I think Ted's notebook finally addressed it. Like, it wasn't talked about in any of the post-qualifying sound. Sky didn't pick up on it at all. Like I said, I saw your tweet and I retweeted yours. So I give you full credit for the sleuthing and investigating as to what the heck happened to Alonso there. And yeah, he binned it. It looked like once you saw it as the last laps were going, you saw Perez slip. And you knew something was going to happen, then you see yellow flags right away. I did not realize Sainz had been involved in it until you look on the timing and you see red dots across the board. And then, I'm watching Lando's last attempt. Then the race engineers are going on, well, we got a problem. The track is blocked. And they're all, and then everybody's trying to figure out, do we switch off the car to try to cool it down? What do we do? Because you can't really have enough one car just sitting. That's really bad for everything. So crazy end of the qualifying. We didn't get that nice crescendo effect, but I thought the qualifying overall was Very entertaining. I mean, I felt bad for Pierre Gasly. That dude should have been up in the top 6 or 7 easily, if not even higher. He was there throughout all the practice sessions, so that was a surprise.
Yeah.
But he was a victim of missing the lights by about a half second, not even, on his last Q1 qualifying attempt. So track was ramping up, and he got caught up. Other surprise, obviously, Daniel Ricciardo with the crash on Friday, that put him in the back. Got a decent lap out of it, but, not good enough, obviously, to get any higher than 14th, so can't really say all that much. But it was incredibly tight throughout the entire field. I think P1 to P15 or something at one point was separated by less than a second. So millimetric perfection, that was qualifying on Saturday. And hell of good laps from both Sainz and Leclerc. I thought Ferrari were, at least on the qualifying pace, the kings of Monaco.
Yeah, Leclerc was definitely on a faster lap towards the end there, and that definitely screwed up a bunch of people. Like Hamilton, Vettel, Ocon, I think went out on used first and then on new tires. But I'd be curious to know kind of your thoughts after Leclerc's crash last year and Perez's crash this year. You caused a red flag in qualifying. Should you get your lap time deleted?
It's interesting. You certainly have that rule in IndyCar where if you are the cause of the whatever, the yellow or the red, I mean, IndyCar, they take away your fast 2 laps, so you can't even, use your bankers. So on a track like this, that rule makes complete total sense. We're going to go from here to Baku, and I would hate to lose a minute and 40-something lap, where you're really pushing because it just means that then people won't push. That I think is the opposite of that. But yeah, I mean, it was annoying. And unfortunately, I don't know that there's a mechanism. Like, I almost wish they could go back to, if there's an incident within 2 minutes of the clock ending, I wish they'd go back to 2 minutes. Because you could still then get around and get everybody one more go at it. You had plenty of daylight. There was no reason not to do it. That's how I'd like to see that rule actually get rectified. But, again, I'm not running the FIA.
I like that. We'll get onto the FIA again later.
Yes, exactly. Well, as now we go from the dry Saturday to now we thought was going to be dry. I mean, if you tuned into the F2 race at the ridiculous hour of the morning, you were greeted by, pristine blue skies. There was not a cloud anywhere. And I'm thinking, well, I said 80% chance of rain. Well, I'm going to look stupid. Well, okay, I guess we're going to have our 78 laps. We go around and nobody passes anybody, and that's what we're going to do. So we get to right around, 10 minutes before the race starts. All of a sudden, cloud came in from the sea. The weather changes. The wind picked up. We had a little bit of squall go over the grid. Now all the teams are caught out because they're all on the wrong tires. So the unique thing about Monaco is there is one way in and one way out of the pit lane. And that's in the middle of the paddock, basically. So you have 20 crews scrambling like you wouldn't believe, trying to get the right tires on the car. They managed to do that. The race broadcasts come on. We have the music. We have Crofty go through the grid and all that other good stuff. And then we see start procedures suspended. No real reason as to why. Looked like we were all good to go. We saw the rain. We saw the teams change the tires. Looked like we were all good. Why are we not running? So then we get another message that says formation lap was to start 9 minutes past the hour local time. So that's a 6-minute delay. So that's not awful. But, it's 6 minutes. So that we get to that time, and then we get another message from race control that says formation lap to start now 16 minutes past the hour. And now all competitors are required to start on full wet. So if people had gone from slicks to inners, which is probably what they all did in that first little squall line, they now have to go have this entire act happen again where they have to change everybody onto full wets. So we do that. We actually do get running. We have a formation lap. We have 2 formation laps. And meanwhile, the rain now is just starting to chuck it down even more and more and more. It's getting worse. I looked at a lot of different onboards. I could not see anything. So I understand there was lots of aquaplaning. Drivers were not calling the conditions safe. I actually agreed with that assessment at that point. Red flag at that point, right call. Nothing else you could do. There were rivers all over it. So we wait for another, 25 minutes? And then we finally get now the actual start of the race, which they didn't mention. Now, somewhere in the background, the race clock, for some strange reason, starts. Nobody explained why the race clock starts. And we wait 5 minutes, and then we have the cars released, and then we actually started going. Now, we could not do a standing start, as I will explain in a little minute as to why. And this is really the bugaboo that caused all of this. So we end up running around for a couple of formation laps. We then eventually get going. Obviously, as we're going to talk about, we did not finish the full race distance. The clock ran out on the race. Deanna, I don't know. I don't get what the FIA was. I get some of it. I don't get all of it. What's your take?
I got a lot of issues. So I think the chaos in the beginning and taking so long to get those cars off the grid was ridiculous. Like, you had a bunch of people changing tires, you had different people on intermediates and slicks. If they just would have started, we would have had an interesting kind of few laps. People would have had to come in. Conditions get too bad, we red flag then. We red flag until the conditions are okay again. We do not look at the radar. We just go with what's in front of us. We get the race going again. Like, that's, we should have just kept going through this. But instead, we get all these delays. All this is happening. It also takes any time that we're like, okay, we're ready to go now. It's 10 minutes, so that is eating into our clock still. I think that these teams like have this down. Like, we could at least make that 5 to move this all along. We learned in Spa. We have small windows. We need to execute in those windows. And it was just all really confusing. And I think my biggest issue with this is it ended up, I think, being correct what they did with the clock, because it was 2 hours in the 3-hour window, which is the rule. But the communication is horrible. There was no indication of clock anywhere. Like, show that to the fans. There was no indication why, when it stopped raining, why we were still waiting. Like, there might have been some kind of electrical issue or something. I've heard little bits and pieces there. I don't know if that's true, but that's something you could easily pass to the commentary team. Let them, pray that. It just, nobody knew why we were waiting, why we weren't doing a standing start on, the second time around, why, it just wasn't being communicated, which I think I would have had a lot more sympathy for the decisions that they made had they communicated that. But they didn't, and so I'm confused. I'm getting really annoyed trying to figure it out, because I can't see a reason why we're not starting and why we're not going, because it's not raining. And, I understand, I guess, looking at the radar, but the radar has been wrong a lot of times, too. So if we have good enough conditions, just let them go. Anyway, it was very, very frustrating. I think we could have had a much better, more exciting race than we did, but frustrating. It just led to a lot of speculation when there didn't need to be, if they just communicated.
I think you said a couple really good things there. One, the messaging was atrocious. I mean, you ended up with... So, in the background, you mentioned the power failure. So that was actually the real reason we got that first delay. Was nobody mentioned, apparently, a transformer blew back in, mainland France, and the starting lights had no power. So you could have done the Charlie waiting, I pushed that button, and nothing would have happened. So I got it, but they didn't mention it until after the race. Crofty puts it almost under his breath as they're going up to the podium. He finally explains what's going on. It was one of my better tweets of the weekend, was I'm like, okay, I got to tell everybody this, because, okay, this is exactly now this all makes so much more sense. But the messaging in the moment was awful. You had Croft and Brundle and Kravitz, and I don't know if the same thing was going on the other F1 TV feed, but just lighting everybody and the FIA on fire for not getting going. If you said, look, there's a power failure, we can't do a standing start. Why? Because the lights ain't working. I think everybody would have understood that. We would have waited whatever time we would have said, hey, are the lights working? Now let's go racing. Why were you trying, what face were you trying to save? This goes back to my headline. You were trying to save face, and you fell flat on it because of it. This has got to get better. We do have rain tires. We do have the ability to run in the rain. I understood when the red flag came out at the formation lap, because, we don't want a repeat of 2001 into Malaysia, where cars are just careening off. There's lots of barriers. There's not Tech Pro everywhere. These are expensive cars. I get that. But, yes, I think you're right. if conditions are favorable to go, we go, and then we change and we adapt on the fly. That's why we're F1, damn it.
Yep. And then I also just, while we're complaining about race direction here, also had a couple issues with flags. One being qualifying, throwing a very premature red flag for Yuki with a very tiny bit of his wheel cover coming off, I think. And then subsequently ruining a ton of laps and completely unnecessary. And then we get to the race itself, which I guess we'll talk more of, but going forever on a VSC, then forever to a safety car, and then forever going to this red flag. I think it took about 9 minutes to get to the red flag when it was very obvious that that barrier was destroyed. And I just don't understand why. I think Crofty or Brundle, one of them mentioned it, is that now that we have had a division of power with Massey, now there's so many people trying to make decisions that it's taking forever to make decisions, which is also not good. I mean, I'm not team bring Massey back, but we still have not figured out a lot of structural issues as well.
Yeah. I mean, and this is not the first time, and it doesn't seem to matter who the race director is, because we've seen this pattern where before it was either a safety car or it's not. It's either a red flag or it's not. I mean, you saw the Haas in pieces, as we'll talk about that, and I instantly said, that's red flag. Half the drivers on the team radio all said, red flag, this has got to be a red flag. And instead we had a virtual safety car? That was maddening. I'm like, what you're trying to preserve the positions in there. And then we went to full safety car, fine. And I was like, okay, if they're going to clean it up under full safety car, fine. We'll lose the laps, I'll live with it. But then they red flagged it anyway. Why did we have to go 3-1 versus 1-3? I don't get that.
And ironically, this is like a similar thing that happened with Mick in Saudi Arabia last year.
Yep.
But it's the VSC thing. I still have not wrapped my head around it. They do kind of love to do that. But this was such a big accident. I don't know why you wouldn't immediately want to start bunching cars up and just throw a full safety car. It doesn't really make sense why we go a full lap under a VSC and then make a decision. I just don't think that that's fully necessary. But if somebody has a reason as to why, let me know. I haven't figured that one out.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, we'll get into all this probably as we go through the field, but we will start with the back markers. And some interesting people kind of in the back markers today. The non-finishers of the race were Alex Albon, Mick Schumacher, as we'll discuss, Kevin Magnussen. It was a bad lap for Haas because both drivers went out on the same lap. Yuki Tsunoda was in the last classified runner in P17. P16 was Zhou Guanyu. P15, Nicholas Latifi. P14, Lance Stroll. And we have to talk about Team Canada for just a minute when we get there. And in P13, we all thought he was going to finish 12th. So he did us one worse. That was Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. So at least he improved one position. So that's at least improvement, I guess.
I think he was helped out by some other shenanigans.
Yeah. He continues to have his struggles in that car. So let's talk about Mick Schumacher. Let's talk about the big incident on track, dropping it. I think going out of it's the back corner. Mm-hmm. He spun. He was lucky to hit where there was Tech Pro. That good placement of Tech Pro, FIA. At least I'll give you that. And then the back of the car detaches. It looked a lot scarier than it was. He was able to walk away. So again, safety stuff doing what it's supposed to do, thank goodness. But then we ended up with, like you said, a virtual safety car, then to a full safety car, and then finally to the red flag, which we all thought in that moment that was a red flag.
Also, my next complaint is TV direction.
Yes.
I know that this is a reoccurring theme, but if you're unaware, Monaco has their own TV direction, which is considerably worse than what we have to typically deal with anyway. So the fact that when that crash happened, K-Mag had already retired. Literally nobody noticed K-Mag retired. We had no indication. Suddenly you see a Haas ripped to shreds, and then you see K-Mag standing on the side of the road, and then I was just like, what is going on? It was just the most confusing thing.
Yes. I thought it was K-Mag's car. I didn't even realize it was Nick's car. I'm like, well, you obviously showed the guy who crashed, right? Well, wrong. We were wrong.
Yes.
So here's another one. When we get, and we'll talk about this when we get to our predictions. According to F1 Reddit, and I don't, you can tell me how official that is. Apparently there were 12 on-track overtakes. Of the 12, only 2 were shown on the actual TV broadcast. Yeah.
Yes, that sounds about right. At least he didn't get strolled this year. I guess. Maybe an improvement.
I mean, this is why I'm kind of with John on the dinosaur that is Monaco, because we shoot it a certain way because we have to shoot it a certain way because we've always shot it this way, and we're not evolving with the times.
So yes, this is, I think, a good opportunity to kind of talk about Monaco itself as a whole.
Yeah.
And I know that they're in contract negotiations, and I think that, I mean, there's been all this posturing, like, we're not going to come back to Monaco. Monaco will be every other year. I think that's just talk, but I think Monaco is at the point where it does not hold the power that it used to, and it needs to relinquish some. And I hope a major point of this contract negotiation is getting rid of the TV direction. It'll be other things like getting in line with the kind of sponsorship that all the other races have, and kind of getting on board with F1 stuff, which I think is the right way to go. I do not want to get rid of Monaco because, I mean, I'm kind of love the historic stuff. I love what it means to it. I have, like, personally don't want to get rid of it, but they got to make some concessions, and I am praying that TV direction is one of them.
Yeah, TV direction definitely, I think, is one that can sure as hell can't hurt, because we have, like, I know where is it right into right before the tunnel. They have had this construction site that they have tried so hard for the last, I think, 4 or 5 seasons to not show construction in process. And because of that, I think they have literally tailored their entire broadcast around not showing that part of town. Like, you have the big camera that's on the boom that looks down at the, the twisty bits, by not just past Casino Square there. And they never pan over because they don't want to show that, and you lose stuff that way. You have the weird times where sometimes you use the tunnel cam, sometimes you don't use the tunnel cam. There's no flow to how to cover an actual race and look at where the action is, because you're just constantly refreshing the same sequence that have worked, maybe used to work, but it's not working now. So yeah, that, and Monaco apparently, one, they pay less fee than anybody else, so that's a problem, I think, for Liberty. The other thing is what Monaco was doing. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a bit of a watch war going on.
Yep.
Liberty has a contract with Rolex to be the official timekeeper of Formula One. Tag Heuer has a contract with the Monaco G people to be the official timekeeper of the Monaco GP. So you literally had a shot with Rolex in one and Tag Heuer in the other. This is the weird crap that has to get resolved in order to get Monaco a new contract. But yeah, as a fan, race direction, number one. And power grid would also be nice. A consistent working power grid that doesn't go away in a rainstorm. Yeah. Not in a lightning storm, but in a rainstorm. That would also be a good thing. Mm-hmm. All right, so moving now into the midfield. P12 was Esteban Ocon, although he was down there because he was given the 5-second penalty for causing a collision with one Lewis Hamilton at Saint-Debat. P11 was Pierre Gasly. P10 was Sebastian Vettel. P9, Valtteri Bottas. P8, Lewis Hamilton. P7 was Fernando Alonso. We'll talk about him in a minute. P6, Lando Norris. P5, he manages to do it again. In the top 5 every race this year, that streak continues. George Russell, and I guess you can call him the hard luck kid this week. P4, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Thoughts on the midfield?
Oh, there's a lot. Well, I think kind of shout out to Gasly. Those were the 2 overtakes we actually saw, and the biggest mover on the day. So was able to kind of make that different strategy call in the intermediates. I wish we would have had more time to be able to do stuff like that, but instead we got race delays, blah, 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 blah. We already complained about that. But, yeah, I think provided some entertainment on the day. Really unfortunate with qualifying, I think, and it's just kind of been a disaster of a season for him, unfortunately. So hopefully he starts turning around here soon.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally meters. Like, you watched the light change from green to red, and he's passing under it. So I felt bad. The track had ramped up. I mean, that is one of the reasons I think you got to watch that qualifying so closely, because they start out, and they're in, like, the 114s and 115s. And as that first 18 minutes goes, by the end of it, they're down in the 113s, and they're pushing the 112s. And at the end, obviously, the qualifying lap was a low 111. I think the track record's a 110 something. So, I mean, that's how much evolution goes on in just that hour of running. But yeah, I mean, he would have easily, I would have thought, just based on where his pace was, would have been higher. He probably makes points. Easy, I think in that case. And good on him for having the guts and the gumption to make some of those overtake moves in places where you didn't necessarily see. So I thought he had a very good showing on Sunday. All right, let's talk about one Fernando Alonso, who decided on his last stints after the pit stop, I'm going to go slow. And I'm going to go slow because I can go slow because I want to make my tires last. Was he on a set of hards or was he on mediums? I can't remember. I think he was on...
was on 2 seconds. He was on mediums.
He was on mediums. Okay, so that makes a little more sense because you weren't necessarily sure if you were going to get those mediums to the end. When we had the red flag with the Schumacher incident, you had a bit of split strategy. Some teams elected not to change tires. So if they were on the hards, they kept the hards that they were on. Some teams elected to go to the mediums. We saw Perez do that. He locked up right away, and we figured, okay, that his tires were cooked after that. And Alonso, being one of them, decided that he was going to go and do a tire-saving stint. To the extent of, so he's behind Lando at that point. I think the gap opened up to over something like 30 seconds, and there's the shot of all the gaggle of cars in the top 6 in one half of the track, and P7 through everybody else on the other end of the track. Talk about making your car wide and defending. I guess you can do this. It's Monaco after all.
Yep. So at one point, there was 35 seconds between Norris, who was at the end of the leading pack, and Alonso in 7th. And then from Alonso back to Latifi in last, there were 11 seconds. Like, they were just on top of each other, and nobody could get past it. And that's just kind of Monaco and dry. And the only time I think you can really pass is when there's that big tire differential, like 8 intermediate to a soft, or to an actual dry tire. So, yeah, we had all of the overtakes, anything like that came in the beginning, and then there were none at the end after that. After the first, I think, pit stop sequence, or like the second one, I guess. Definitely not after the red flag. But anyway, that was fun. It provided me some entertainment, I guess.
So it obviously bottlenecked, one Lewis Hamilton. So the other question I had, did you think that was good team strategy for him to do that? Because he kind of then screws over his teammate because he backs him up. He knows he's got, I don't know if he knew that Ocon had the 5-second penalty, but if he did, he certainly just took him right out of the points.
Yeah, I mean, he did end up, I think, about 5 seconds up the road from Hamilton, though. So I think there was space there, and then that did kind of back up Hamilton into Ocon. Ocon couldn't make up that space. But yeah, it did seem strange to me. Probably doesn't seem like the greatest call that Alpine could have done, but I also don't know what else they could have done. Because they weren't going to go challenge any of the leading 6, so they might as well park it, save the tires. At least you get one car home in 7th.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me of the soccer strategy of, we know we don't have the horses to run with this team, so we're going to take all 10 of our guys, and we're going to put them between where the offense is, and it's called backing the bus up. Fernando Alonso basically backed the bus up in Monaco on Sunday. So, but that enabled one Lando Norris to have a very interesting final stint, because I'll take you through this. So he's basically, maybe 6-7 seconds behind Russell. He realizes when he asks, what's the gap behind me? And the race engineer comes on and says, 30 seconds. He goes, does he have a problem? No. Well, then why can't we do a pit stop? And they're like, well, let's think about it. So they call him in. They put him on mediums. He goes out. He blitzes the fastest lap, so he gets the point for that. And he was at that point, with 11 minutes to go on the clock, he's 30 seconds behind George Russell. The delta at the end of that race was 0.263 seconds. So 30 seconds he erased on George Russell. If he had one more lap, he might have been able to do a dive bomb. But those were some incredible laps, some of the best I've ever seen him do around Monaco. And this is even, I think, better than the podium from last year. Just the driving skill.
Yeah, I think he had a massive weekend all around, and last weekend as well. Still not, I don't think, quite 100%. So just, yeah, super impressive. Great to see. Good on one side of the McLaren garage, at least.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting. I'm almost thinking there's certain drivers who you can get maybe an extra 4 to 5 tenths out of a car. Lando's probably going to be one of them because, I mean, we're seeing Alonso, when he was with McLaren, used to do the same thing. Even though the car was crap, he would still manage, whether it was against Van Dorn or whether whoever was in the other seat, he'd get 4 or 5 tenths on him easy week to week. We're seeing that same pattern with Norris. We're also seeing it with George Russell, who has come into that Mercedes and is dragging that car and keeping it in the fight. Again, all races this year in the top 5. Great result for him. And if it wasn't for a bad McLaren call to put Lando on the intermediates and then go to slicks, he probably doesn't have that happen. But take advantage where you can. Good on you, George.
Yep, impressive as ever.
Yep. All right, before we leave the midfield, we do have to talk about Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc, who started on pole, looked like he was, again, hopefully going to finally break the curse of Monaco. He did see the checkered flag, so we have made progress. But Deanna, take us through the pit stop as you saw it, or it was the second pit stop as it turned out to be.
So I kind of had a list of events, but it includes the top 3, so I might just...
Okay, well, why don't we do that? Yeah, okay, so obviously the podium was in third place was Max Verstappen, in P2 was Carlos Sainz, in P1 Sergio Checo Perez, now becoming the most winning Mexican driver in F1 history. So take us through basically the top 4 as you saw it.
Yeah, so we started with Leclerc first, then Sainz, then Perez, then Verstappen. So the first person to pit was Perez onto inters. Then we had some drama between Ferrari wanting to pull Sainz in, Sainz saying that he wanted to stay out and wait to go onto slicks. So then it seems like they made the decision to just be like, okay, we're pulling in Leclerc. So then 2 laps later, Leclerc and Verstappen pit on inters. On the outlap, Leclerc is held up by Albon and at the end of it loses track position to Perez. So then 3 more laps come by, and that's when Ferrari finally pulls in Sainz and for whatever reason decides to double stack Leclerc behind him for slicks. On that outlap, Sainz was also held up by another Williams in Latifi, and he gets behind Perez. Leclerc, because of that, well, the following lap, Perez and Verstappen, they pit for hards as well. So we get the come out with Perez about a second and a half, Sainz, which could have made that up because of Latifi. Then it was Verstappen with less than half a second behind was Leclerc, and that half a second alone could have been made up by not double stacking them because Sainz got held, or Leclerc got held up there. And then from then on out, we kind of just had the 4 of them, nose to tail, all the way to the end. During the red flag, the 2 Red Bulls did switch onto new mediums. The Ferrari stayed on 10-lap-old hards. The only thing that kind of happened was Perez locked up, saw another bird, had already killed one that weekend, I guess freaked him out. So we thought maybe with the lockup we might get something else, but there were no passes at the end, but I think the last bit was kind of fun because at one point between the top 4 there was only 1.7 seconds between the 4 of them, but really no changes there. So just some interesting strategy calls that left a Ferrari 1-2 to a 2-4.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of... I did not understand the call at the time to do the double stack. Obviously, their own engineering staff were saying, stay out, and then he's coming down, and now Leclerc is, cussing and screaming on the radio. And if you want a good cuss fest, pull up the F1 TV, unfiltered. Leclerc totally lighting his team up on fire there. I understood why in the moment. I mean, that just was not a good call all the way around. Yeah, I mean, if they let him go one more lap on inters, he might be able to preserve. He might at least be able to stay in front of Max. I don't know if... I think the win at that point had already gone.
Yeah,
but he might at least been able to stay in front of Max.
I think had he been able to stay out, had a clean pit stop, he probably would have been fine. Again, not held up by the Williams, just absolutely having a disaster. Albon tried to make the case that he was on softs, Leclerc was on mediums behind, or on inters behind. Like, he could go faster, but I don't think, that's not, you got to get out of the way. You're getting blue flags, get out of the way for the leader. So that was also bad because, he only came out he lost. That's when he lost track position to Perez. But yeah. Anyway, just some questionable decisions. They probably should have just left both Ferraris out there until slicks. You have track position. Yes, the Red Bulls pitted for inters and they have fast lap times, but you're at Monaco. Say they catch back up to you. Now all 4 of you have to pit for slicks, and you still probably come out 1-2 Ferrari, 1-2 Red Bull. I don't know really why they brought them in for inters at all, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think they saw the pace of people like Gasly, but the window of opportunity for that was maybe 10 laps earlier. When those tires might have done something and you could have maybe made up the time. I mean, I talked briefly about, the same thing kind of happened to Norris there. They brought him in for a set of inters that they think he was only on for maybe 4 or 5 laps, and then he has to come in for slicks. Russell went from extreme wets to slicks and jumped him because of it. So you could clearly say it was extreme wets to slicks. That was the way to go in a drying track at Monaco. Unless you got on the inners really, really early, like some of those backmarker guys did, and obviously Gasly was able to make it work. But for the most part, that was the strategy to go with. Once they made that call to bring Leclerc in for inners, I think that definitely took away the win. The second call to bring him in for slicks to the same lap as Sainz with the double stack, then that takes him basically out of the podium. So it was 2 mistakes, not necessarily 1 there, that kind of cost him. But the hard luck story continues. James has chimed in with some of his thoughts on the grid. He's not even upset. Oh, we haven't even talked about this. So we get post-race. We're watching the Indy 500. I'm enjoying my Indy 500. And all of a sudden, no, we're not done in Monaco yet. We have a post-race protest from one Scuderia Ferrari on both Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen. The race broadcast kind of clearly showed it looked like at least Verstappen's tire was at least a little over that yellow line. However, here's another brilliant piece of deduction by the FIA here. The rule had changed. I actually have the decision up. I don't know if I want to read this to you, but let's see if I can find part of this, because I loved, at least they admitted that they were wrong. Where's the part about the cutting and paste? Oh, okay. So the race director's notes, which was Ferrari comes in screaming, the race director's notes said you had to be to the right of the line there. That's always been the rule. Rule was actually changed at the end of last year. If you remember, I think it was Yuki Tsunoda got a penalty in Austria to twice. Yeah, 2 5-second penalties in Austria. So they actually, at the end of the year, went back and changed the rule that said you basically can go over the line to the extent that any part of your tire is on the line, you're in. You're okay. So you have to be, all the tire has to be over in order to do that. However, in the race director's notes, now, look, I sometimes cut and paste our agendas from last year, especially on the previews, because it's really kind of simple thing to do. All the track facts are basically the same. We update a couple of stats, and we're good to go. I expect to do that. I'm a podcaster. I don't expect the FIA to do that. They're a professional organization, dang it. What did they do? They cut and pasted the race director's notes from last year, where the rule said one thing, into this year, where the rule was technically another thing, and Max is technically okay, but Ferrari comes in screaming about it, and Ferrari gets their protest denied because the notes were a, quote, cut and paste from the 2021 version of the notes, and it hence not been changed to reflect the 2022 Appendix L changes. Yikes. Talk about the cherry on the pie for the FIA today had to be this decision.
Yeah, and I think that's just them kind of saving themselves. That's a weird rule. I don't know why it changed to begin with. Maybe because there's lower visibility in these cars now, but just all around, just dumb. I mean, I think it's fine because technically that has been the rule that's been established, and then we wouldn't have the whole drama of taking away Perez's race win and blah, 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 blah. So they saved themselves a PR nightmare with that one, I guess. Or a smaller nightmare with this than they would have had they actually gone with the protest. But anyway, just the FIA being the FIA.
So now James's comment will make much more sense. So now I can actually introduce it here. So he's not even upset about the Max kind of sort of crossing the pit exit line. Charles shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. The team let him down on Sunday. The car looked good. and the season's far from over. So it's only, as we'll talk about when we can do our standings, just a couple, still only a few points, still in there. He thought more impressive stuff from Lando. Both him and George are having sneakily awesome seasons, especially considering the issues with both of their respective cars, and I would agree with that. And then his final comment, does Schumacher suck? Once Latifi and maybe even Stroll finally move on, it will be even more apparent that maybe Mick might not just have it. I could be wrong, but I think it will be a while before he's proven as such. So what's your thoughts on young Mick? I feel like it's such an incomplete grade still, but it's not looking great right now.
Yep. He's costing the team quite a bit of money still, after doing some damage last year as well. So you just kind of hope some of those issues would start sorting themselves out. I guess he's gotten into Q3 once. I was like very sympathetic for the first. I think we're about a third the way through, of which I'm like, okay, you did not have a teammate last year, basically. This is your first time kind of having a barometer in K-Mag to kind of compare yourself to, but he's definitely not where K-Mag is, although K-Mag has not been fantastic in race. Whether that is all his fault or some kind of Haas strategy has been a little bit questionable here and there, but it has not been what it has been in the first couple races. So I don't know, maybe they turn it around, but it's been a mess. There's not really been a big saving grace kind of moment for him. And also, while we mentioned it, we didn't mention the Canadian adventures at the beginning of the
Yes.
race.
Yes, Team Canada on, I think it was the second set, the real formation lap, the one that actually counted. Both Nicholas Latifi, it's in my highlight reel actually, which is hilarious, where he just goes, the car didn't turn, and I hit the wall. At the slowest corner in Formula One, and he couldn't make the corner while going extra slow. And at the same time, Lance Stroll had hit the wall right around Casino Square there. Not a good lap for Team Canada. When
Canada.
You can't go around on a formation lap. Yikes.
It was so bad. Oh, man. Quite the pair.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One last thing we didn't mention. The Ocon and Hamilton incident. Also, bad TV direction. I think the actual penalty came on the second time they came together. That did not make the broadcast, where Ocon, I think, kind of pushes Hamilton into the wall in the pit straight, which makes a lot more sense, I think, as a penalty versus the first one that we did see on the broadcast. But it's also kind of unclear because in the race directors, in the actual FIA document, they give you a time and not a lap, so I can't officially be yeah, it was that one. And I also don't know where the clock starts. I have no idea.
Right,
so
I was going to say, because we don't know when the clock started, because it mysteriously started under the red flag, which it's not supposed to do. Confused. I think we're going to call this was the longest Monaco Grand Prix. It was also one of the more confusing Monaco Grand Prix that we've ever had. All right, so we're going to come back. We'll recap where we are standings-wise. We'll answer a couple of fan emails, which I have to put into our little document here. And then we'll talk about the other big race on the day, the Indy 500, on the greatest day in motorsport for the year. So come on back. We'll get into it. All right, welcome back to Season 4, episode number 19 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our Monaco/Indy 500 review. You've got Andy and I'm along with Deanna, and we've just wrapped up the Monaco GP. We'll talk a lot actually, probably about the Indy 500 in just a second. But for now, Deanna, let's recap our driver standings post-Monaco.
Yes, so still in the lead of the championship is Verstappen with 125 points. In second is Leclerc on 116. And now Sergio Perez is only 15 points out of first with 110 points. In fourth, we still have George Russell on 84, with Carlos Sainz right behind on 83. Hamilton is in sixth with 50, Norris in seventh with 48, Bottas in eighth with 40, Ocon in ninth with 30, and K-Mag in 10th with 15.
So
and
our
Nicholas Latifi is still 21st.
In the 20 driver championship. Talk about heavy lifting. It's impressive. It's impressive.
Yes.
All right, so our team standings are now as follows. Red Bull Racing, Red Bull Powertrains now leads the F1 championship on 235 points. Second place is Ferrari on 199. Third place is Mercedes on 134. Now we have our big chasm. Back to fourth with McLaren on 59. Fifth place is Alfa Romeo on 41. Sixth is Alpine on 40, so that's looking like a tight, spicy race maybe. Seventh place is AlphaTauri with 17. Eighth place is Haas Ferrari, not the real Ferrari team, the Haas Ferrari on 15 points. Ninth place is Aston Martin on 7. They did get a point in Monaco, so good for them. And in 10th place is Williams on 3. So we still do have all constructors generating points, some more than others, obviously. All right, moving into our fan email section. Short but sweet tonight. We'll tag team this a little bit tonight, I think. Deanna, take the first couple.
Okay, so starting with Rachel Fleming. Says, great to see Perez win, especially since he was clearly the faster of the two Red Bulls all weekend. However, I'm concerned that Haas might be in more trouble financially. Mick will be on his third chassis in a season, and we haven't even reached a third of the way through the season. Could Haas have to miss races because of this? Question mark.
Yes. It's an interesting question. There was a lot of talk this weekend, I know, about budget cap and do we go through the budget cap and how much can we go over the budget cap? And is some of it related to energy inflation and literally keeping the lights on? We haven't really talked about spare parts in any of it, so that's interesting. However, Haas was one of the teams that really weren't screaming we're at the top of the budget cap. So apparently I think they're okay, at least for now. If this continues to happen, eventually they're not going to be as okay. Mick can't continue to destroy race cars. It's just that simple. Eventually you're going to run out of parts.
Yeah. And my kind of note on the cost cap, I looked at the financial regulations a couple weeks ago because I was bored. And mostly kind of thinking about inflation. So the way that they do it is they will increase the cost cap because of inflation, but it's in arrears. So right now, I think we're looking at 2020 inflation, and they only add like 3% over whatever like G7, like the IMF produces, G7 being the biggest 7 countries in the world, and kind of like averaging their inflation across. So we are in a 2022 inflationary environment using 2020 inflation and dealing with all the supply chain issues. And I feel like probably a lot of these specialized parts and stuff like that are probably feeling a bit more inflation than kind of even the averages are at now. So I hope that they kind of increase it because they kind of take a look at it because the macro environment right now is just not going to work, I don't think. And we don't want to see them missing races. And if the teams do have the budgets to be able to increase them, they're going to have to.
I think I heard 7 out of the 10 teams are in that same kind of quandary right now, and it's not just the well-off teams; it's some of the main teams, as well. So I think the only ones that weren't, I know Haas was one, Alpine was one, and Alfa Romeo were the 3 that thought, because they were so far under, that they would be safe with where the cost cap is now if they didn't change any word of the regulations. The other 7 are therefore not safe. So I don't think we're going to have teams dropping off. Nobody wants to see that. I do think they will come to some sort of concession. I want it to be about actual operating expenses and not about upgrades. So when I get to our awards, I'm going to call somebody out because he made a bit of a Freudian slip in his press conference about upgrades.
All right, so next up. Yep. Yes, Randy says, unfortunately, nothing about the actual drivers on the track making this race interesting. I respectfully disagree. I think there was a lot of intrigue up and down the grid. Even if the second half of the race we didn't have any overtakes, it is still so much fun to watch the top 4 cars at the top 2 teams be within 2 seconds of each other for lap after lap. And at any one of those points, they could shoot across that chicane and make a mistake and kind of get past for the lead. So I think it was fun. It was exciting. We had some intrigue with different tires and different strategies, and I thoroughly enjoyed the race, I think, as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I calibrate Monaco is what's the level of tension? If you just have the 78 car laps go around and there's no tension and, there's no drama, that's a boring Monaco race. And there are some that have been like that in the past. This was anything but that. I mean, from the Leclerc screaming at his team, the pit stop's not working, so we didn't really know what strategy we were going to get because we had the changing conditions. And then, like you said, the tension of 4 cars at any point. You know, we talk about the qualifying being millimetric. The race laps had to be millimetric too. So, I mean, you know, any one of those could have banged a barrier, could have gone off at that chicane, could have... I mean, look at the save that Carlos Sainz made on the main straight. Because if he bins it there, that's a huge championship changer. And that stuff could have happened any lap during that entire sequence, wet or dry. So I think as a tense race, I thought it was good. It was above average, I think, for me. It was long. I didn't particularly like the length of it or the messaging around it, but I left okay. Like Monaco as a whole, for a Monaco race, this was one of the better ones, I thought.
Yeah.
All right.
I enjoyed the on-track. Let's separate the on-track from the off-track.
Yes, exactly. So, our friend Matt Polanski has chimed in yet again, and he said, today's race is called This is Indy. I'm doing the Indy 500 today because I was not watching that parade known as Monaco. This race had everything. Team orders, big name drivers crashing, pit lane speed penalties. This is definitely about Indy, by the way. And Indy Mania. Indy Mania is that thing where everyone and their mother goes crazy for the 500, then forgets IndyCar is a thing for the rest of the year. I don't think that's going to be the case. Built on the back of his teammates getting penalties, Marcus Ericsson became the 11th F1 driver to win the Indy 500, a list that includes Juan Pablo Montoya, Alex Rossi, Takuma Sato, Alan, and oh yeah, we won't talk about that. So, anyway, he's now done the spoiler of getting into our Indy 500 stuff. But before that, we have our weekly awards and our predictions before we get into Indy. So, we start with the Rubbish Award. Deanna, I'll have you go first because I think I'm going to be doing a lot of talking after that.
Yes. So I'm going to... I mean, there's a lot of contenders between the FIA, race direction, Ferrari strategy, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to go with FIA communication. And I don't know if they have a comms team. They need a comms team because I think a lot of questions could have been alleviated had just a couple messages got passed on to the fans. So a lot of frustration that I think could have easily been explained away.
All right. So I'll start with mine. And mine goes out to one Christian Horner, who, if you didn't catch, and we talked about this in our preview, you might want to go catch the team principal's press conference because there was all this budget cap talk. It was fairly spicy. I do advise you go check that out. But I thought the most interesting part of that was he made a bit of a Freudian slip. And sometimes Christian Horner does this because, like, a lot of times when he's trying to speak on the goodness of the sport, it's really for the good of his team. He used to do this with engines all the time. And I was on his side about, I hated the hybrids when they first came out because they sounded bad and they broke all the time. I got it. It was really because he was pissed at Renault. But I understood that. But I was with him on that one. But here comes the Freudian slip. Here comes the quote. He's talking about the cost gap. And he says, quote, what we don't want to do is end up playing a game of chicken and say, referring to like Ferrari in this case, does Ferrari go 4.9 over to we go 4.7 over, and does that be one upgrade that ends up being the differentiating factor in the championship? He didn't say it very loud. He kind of said it under his breath, but he said it. That's really what this row is about, isn't it? It's really about that one extra part. That's really what you're going for. It's not for the good of the sport. Don't give me that bull crap. Christian Horner into the bin with ye with that one. All right. Deanna, I'll let you do James's and then I'll do John's.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so James's rubbish is Hamilton. Although, anyway, George continues to get it done on a new team. One that is struggling more than it has in almost a decade. Lewis now 34 points behind young George. Woof. Bonus rubbish to Albon and Latifi for really fucking up my day and blocking McLaren sides.
All right.
Thanks, James.
So, Yep. So James went Hamilton. John sees this and then says, since James is talking Hamilton, I'll say Leclerc. Boy can't even keep up with the top three on new tires. Gonna start calling him Clean Air Leclerc because without it, he has no pace. Also, Alonso and Alpine. Go into the bin with ye as well. This is Formula F1, and your strategy is to go 3.5 seconds slower than everyone else while simultaneously pushing your time-penalized teammate out of the points. What a clown show. I thought racing drivers were supposed to take risks and go for gaps, not be content with 7th effing place with a half of the race still to go. Also, Latifi, seriously, just go home. You're to F1 what Jimmy Johnson is to IndyCar. An embarrassment. You slid under the radar for far too long while Nikita Shitpin captured all the negative attention, but now the spotlight is on you, and you have been exposed. John has found the Tabasco sauce. I know that, because that's pretty spicy.
Yep.
But that's his rubbish, and he's entitled to it. All right. Analysis paralysis. I think this will probably be a outlap clean sweep here, but Deanna, I'll let you go first.
Ferrari.
Yep.
You can elaborate.
I'm going, there's no option. Ferrari on the Leclerc box, then stay out call. Kind of reminded me of the Lewis Hamilton in, out type situation on the radio. Ferrari have reclaimed their award this week. James's call on that is Ferrari, and that sucked. And John says, Ferrari, honorable mention for Mercedes for being too damn timid on strategy again. Your car is a confusing piece of shit. Be brave and try something, anything. Okay, fair point. Dark horse. Deanna, I'll have you go first on this one.
I guess I'll go Pierre Gasly is maybe the best choice there. Recovering, I think, 17th to 12th. Gave us some entertainment. And, yeah, trying something a little bit different. Strategy when you're on the back foot. So, fun times.
Yeah, and John would agree with you on that one. He says Pierre Gasly, only driver to do anything worth watching the entire day, thanks to being on the right tire at the right time. Certainly early. I do not disagree with that at all. James is going Lando Norris. And I'll be the homer as well, and I'm going to go Lando Norris, and I'll tell you why. Because he was 31 seconds behind Russell with 11 minutes to go. He's 20 seconds behind with 6 minutes to go, and he finishes 0.263 seconds behind Russell and got the fastest lap. Those were some mega push laps by Mr. Lando there. He's not a sir yet. He's got a little ways to go. He's got to win a race first. Mm-hmm. But I thought today he was the dark horse of the day. So we move on from that to the driver of the day. Deanna, I'll let you go first.
Sergio Checo Perez. Also kind of a dark horse, I would say, kind of going into the day, but did everything he needed to do. Only thing he really messed up all weekend was putting it in the wall in Q3, but that probably kind of helped him and got him to this position anyway. So, do what you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in full agreement with the Checo call. I thought, redemption from last week where he was kind of the hard luck story, but he ends up coming back. The emotion on his face on the podium was real, and I love to see that. So good passion and good on you, Checo. I hope he makes it into and makes this a championship fight against even amongst it, because it'll make then the decision making on Christian Horner becomes that much more interesting and something else to watch for. James said,
my one point on that is somebody said that had the Bahrain Grand Prix finished one lap earlier, Checo would be tied with Max for the lead of the championship. So he's a DNF out of it, easy, which is fun. Yeah, and I think we're gonna have this championship's gonna go up and down. We've seen it already happen, and we're only 6 rounds in. So I think that's probably going to be more of the same as we move forward. So James was going with Checo. He was disappointed with Ferrari's finish, but couldn't help but be happy for Checo. He deserved this one today. And John is going with Pierre Gasly as his driver of the day. Literally the only driver who did anything of note on track. But he was saying he was happy for Checo and shocked that Red Bull didn't try to find some way of letting Max in front. I also want to make one point because we talked about this last week. This is, I think, a bit of the reverse of what we saw last weekend, where Checo was the better car and they didn't swap them. So I think we can kind of put that to bed. Granted, they didn't have a great time to do that, but I think Checo did have the measure of him this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he had the track position, and he was by far, in qualifying, he was definitely faster. Max was on a bit of the back foot, and probably third is probably damage limitation for him. If Leclerc doesn't have the incident, or the pit stop thing, he probably loses at least 3 points there. So, All right. So we move into our predictions. And I like this, even though I'm not doing all that well this week, simply because James has gone from the outhouse to the penthouse in Monaco this week. He takes the win with 3 points. He gets the pole sitter, Charles Leclerc. He got the quali lap time, and he almost got like an extra point because he was only like a couple thousandths off on his quali time. He almost nailed it.
Had that red flag not happened, Leclerc had set a purple sector 1,
That's
personal
true.
best
Yep.
sector 2. I would have gotten that. Ugh.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. It was. I knew I was out of it. I'm like, I was out of it by the end of Q2. I'm like, well, that slow strategy didn't work well for me. And yeah, I think you're right. I think he probably would have demolished his own time. And he also got P5 George Russell as the bonus pick. Deanna, however, you have nothing to feel bad about. You got 3 points as well. You got the pole sitter, the race fastest lap, so you got that one there, and the P5 bonus pick as well. John had 2 points. He got the pole sitter, because we all agreed on the pole sitter, and he got the P5 bonus pick for George Russell. I got 2 points this weekend. I got the pole sitter for Leclerc. And according to F1 Reddit, at least, I got the prop bet, because I guessed 12 overtakes on track, even though we only saw 2. John's like, how in God's name was there 12 overtakes? This is what the F1 Reddit people who analyze this stuff, I guess, for their living do. So that's what I'm going with. And if you have a better source, I'm happy to hear it, and we can reconsider, and we can take it to the stewards if you want to. However, our season prediction standings, John continues to be in the lead with 19. I am now in second place with you, Deanna, on 17. There is nothing in between us right now. And James, a little bit closer, but still bringing up the rear with 14. Any final thoughts on Monaco before we move over to Indy?
It was a lot more eventful than I thought it was going to be. I'll give them that.
Yeah, it was long. We move from the slowest course of the season in Monaco to the fastest course of the season, which will be Baku. I always love that circuit. I think it always comes with some fun. Qualifying will be fun. There'll be yellow flags all over the place. And can you get a clean lap in? So, yeah, I'm all about that. But F1 heating up at a good time. But we also went straight from Monaco. We were doing Monaco post while Indy 500 was going off. What a final sequence there. Deanna, let's give your main talking points on Indy.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. I love IndyCar so much. It's so good. It's so fun. And yeah, it was a great race. There was always constantly things happening. Constantly somebody crashing out during every single pit cycle. A lot of moving around. The Ganassi's, though, all month looked like they were the ones to beat. If it wasn't Dixon, it was Pillow. If it wasn't Pillow, it was Ericsson, apparently, with TK not too far behind. So I think kind of the end result of Ganassi winning was not surprising. It being Ericsson, I think, was. But, I mean, he had the pace. I think he qualified around 5th. And, yeah, it's great for them. And I loved all the memes of everybody saying, of the 2018 Alfa Romeo lineup, didn't think that Ericsson would be the one with a major race win.
Yeah, from not hitting Roman Grosjean in Baku a couple years ago to winning the Indy 500 is a hell of an accomplishment.
With Grosjean crashing out.
Yes, ironically enough, with Grosjean crashing out of the Indy 500. What we saw, everybody was on the limit for the entirety of this race, from lap 1 to the very end. You could tell the danger zone would be right near the end of the stint, right when the fuel was at the lightest and the tires were giving up. That's where you saw pretty much every incident. It was right in that zone. And it looked like turn 2 was the one that it was catching a ton of people out. You saw VK go out early. You saw Jimmy Johnson go out late. There's more crashes than I can think of. Scott McLaughlin went out. Colton Herta. Talk about the day from hell. In a backup car. His Indy 500 really ended on carb day. Grosjean crashes out. Callum Ilott crashed out as well. Interesting little post note, I guess. Jimmy Johnson was voted Rookie of the Year, which didn't go over so well with one. I think it was Dalton Kellett, David Malukas, who actually was the highest finishing rookie in interesting to see who's paying IndyCar bills, and does Carvana have anything to do with that?
I also love the Carvana commercial where they showed Jimmy wreck 3 times in one commercial. And I was like, what kind of commercial is this? Granted, they're not doing so hot, and I think they laid off like half their company. So
yeah,
maybe some better marketing would help. But anyway, yeah, that was fascinating. I mean, I guess in his favor, he was definitely the quickest over practices, looked pretty strong in qualifying, did lead a lap, but yeah, you would think that finishing the race would be a requirement. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently Twitter was all abuzz today of who has those votes, and because everybody who I was clicking on, they all said that they were voting for Malukas. So, yeah, I kind of agree. I think when you're the fastest or the highest finishing rookie, it should be kind of a no-brainer that that's the guy who should get the award. In front, the last sequence at the end between Ericsson and Award, with Kanaan right on it, and Rosenquist in the mix. Alex Rossi came back from P20 to P5. He got himself in the mix. Connor Daly led a few laps and looked really good for ECR. Helio Castroneves. What the heck are they putting in his cars, man? I mean, that dude just came up through the field. He finished 7th. Alex Palou, who was a hard luck case because, bad timing on a yellow, but still managed to come back and finish 9th. Good on you there. And Scotty Dixon, yeah, same exact issue. The last pit stop goes a little bit too hot coming into the pits. He oversped, got to drive through, and that's why he ended up where he did.
And Scott Dixon has now led the most laps in Indy 500 history. He's led, I think, nearly 3 1/4 distances and has 1 win, and that was tough to watch because without that, he's probably almost guaranteed win. But
yeah, that was clearly the best car. Clearly, the best car was Dixon. He could lead when he wanted to. He was trailing when he wanted to, just to save fuel. The McLarens were good, but they weren't great. Especially on race pace, and it came down to, I think a couple years ago we saw Takuma Sato make the move in turn 1 on the outside. Pato had that same choice, and I'm going back to, because I listened to his radio the entire race, which is a way to watch IndyCar, especially the 500. There's so many ads. The way to watch it, I tweeted this out. If you're new to IndyCar, you want to understand what's going on, and we'll tell you what's going on when they're at commercial and you're watching the other Carvana ad yet again, is to put on the IndyCar app. They have unlimited team radio. You can listen to any driver you want to up and down. You can listen to something called All Scan, which will do the channel flipping for you if you want to do that as well. But listening to Pato's radio before that last sequence, his engineer comes on and says, look, let's also think big picture. You're right in it for the championship, too. Let's not throw it away. I'm pretty sure that's what caused him to then back off at turn 1. We never got another attempt because Sage Karam wrecks on the last lap, and Marcus Ericsson takes the win. But a fascinating, fun month of May, I think, for IndyCar all the way around.
Yeah, and I mean, that unfortunately McLaren was just never, I think, going to get a Ganassi. I think they said that they didn't put the extra bit of downforce on that most other people had in the heat, and he got as good of a run as he ever was going to get, and so that was awesome. But he did a solid job and coming in second. So awesome stuff. Double points, second in the championship. So take what you can get. I also I had Palou's radio on, and I know Herta and Award get all of the hype and all of the kind of media around potentially going to F1, although Award did just get a 3-year extension in the IndyCar team, so we'll see about that. But Palou, he's so good. He's so calm. And so this pit stop sequence was wild. So he comes into the pits, and as he's going in, somebody wrecks. I think it might have been Ilott. So he has to drive through. He can't stop. Pit lane's closed. Runs out of fuel. He has to come in for the second time, get an emergency stop. Then goes around again, comes in for his full stop with tires. Then comes in for a 4th time, and all under the same caution, and has to top off. He comes out. I was listening to his radio. He's calm. He was like, "It's a long race, guys. We got this. It's a great car. This will be fine. This will be great." He was in 30th, and he was so calm, cool, collected, and then recovered all the way up to 9th. And I just think he's just so impressive and just so calm and just incredible. And I'm sure he'll get one day. But unfortunately, bad luck today.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the crop of just a massive talent. Tony Kanaan's still doing it. Old's still good at the Indy 500. We talked about Helio. Simon Pagenaud finished 8th. I mean, Palou to come back, I thought was, again, he just put his head down and he just started picking off people here and there, looking for opportunities. And there he was in the top 10 at the end of it. So, I mean, I thought, again, I love the Indy 500. It's a great spectacle. You do have to do some things as a fan to make it better. I think the IndyCar app is a great way to do it. I know if you're outside the U.S., you can get commercial-free coverage through that same app. I think you do have to pay for it. There isn't commercial-free coverage that I'm aware of. Even if you have the Super Peacock package, I don't think you even get that. So it is just something that we have to deal with. I know Sky Sports does a thing where they have a studio show where they have some commentators that commentate. They don't go away from the race, but they commentate while the NBC is off type situations. That's probably about the best you're going to get. So I saw some tweets about, I guess they had Max Chilton in there, and I guess he was not exactly sounding all that great, but he's a race car driver, not an analyst. Yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Fun race. Yeah.
That is also, when you have a giant major race, that is how you finish it. Under green, throw a red flag, let everybody
There you go.
out,
Yes, exactly.
That's how you handle it.
Yeah.
Little drama.
With what? Well, and again, it still comes down to, we kind of knew with X many laps to go, they were probably going to throw a red flag. Mm-hmm. It's not published. Still want that. That's my way of doing it. Just write it down and tell everybody this is what we're going to do. And there's no ambiguity about it whatsoever. But that was the right call. Absolutely. Don't let that thing finish under yellow. So, any final thoughts from a hell of a Sunday?
Oh my gosh, no. I think I got most of them out.
All right. John has chimed in with some final thoughts. For once, it was a blessing to watch the race on delay and be able to fast forward through the race storm perfectly made for F1. He really wanted to see them go off into San Devat there. While the FIA and the race director were too cowardly to drop the green, if you want Monaco to stay on the calendar, make it a non-point spec all-star-like event with a crap ton of cash and prizes for grabs, a.k.a. true American-style racing. Otherwise, time to let it go. Setting aside my annoyance of Monaco for a second, I'd like to take a moment on this Memorial Day to say thank you to the warriors and families, I agree with this fully, who've sacrificed so much for this country. As someone who grew up in a military family and works with both active and retired military on a daily basis, I see firsthand the sacrifices that you and your families make every single day, and that you and the world will never know about. You are true heroes, and we say thank you. Absolutely, I agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with all the Monaco stuff. I've said my piece on Monaco many times that I think they got to make a separate spec for that race. Have it be for points. Why not? Get Williams a shot to win a race. Why not? But I guess I don't think anyone's going to listen to me on that one. But anyway.
Or smaller cars.
Yes.
Please make you.
Yes. Make that single spec, make it be small. Because you watch the historics and you can see why going around that circuit can actually be interesting, because you can see moves and counter moves and stuff like that. That's all we really want to see. All right, as we said before, we're going to go from the snow and narrow to the extremely wide and fast. The Baku Grand Prix is next up, but we have a week off, so we'll be back on next Wednesday with our preview for that. I guess I'll just go ahead and close this out at that point. So, as always, for Deanna, for John, for James, it's been Andy. What a heck of a good Sunday we had. Let's hope we get some more. And as always, may all your laps be fast.